Can you guys hear me now?
For the first couple of years, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I started off saying I wanted to be like a clinical psychologist because for some odd reason I had an obsession with serial killers. Don't ask me why, but I wanted to study their brains. And then when I saw that, then when I saw all of the school that I would have to do to actually make some money in psychology, I scrapped that. So right around 95, the Olympics was on its way to Atlanta. And somehow, I was supposed to graduate in 95, but that was during the era of Freaknik, and I was partying. And I did not graduate in 4 years. So I did an extra year. Luckily, the extra year included a program from the Olympic host team. And so they basically said, we're going to teach these kids in these HBCUs here in Atlanta how to support the broadcasts that are happening for the Olympic Games. So I basically, I was in some mass comm classes, but I still hadn't really pinpointed what I wanted to do. So I went to a Mary Kay party with a cousin of mine, and I don't wear makeup, but they said they had free food. And so as a student, I was starving, and I was like, well, I'm going to eat the food. So I get down there, and this lady is like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I have no idea. And mind you, graduation was maybe 2 weeks away. So she said, well, send me your resume, and I'll see where we can place you with the games. I said, okay. And in my mind, I rationalized it as, okay, I'll probably be selling peanuts and popcorn, things like that. Well, as luck would have it, she put me with a broadcast team. And so every venue with the Olympics has their own designated broadcast team that comes with satellite truck, 30 to 40 people on the crew, audio engineers, and I was new to all of this. So they dropped me in, and was out of Australia. She came to me and she said, well, I have an assignment and I need you guys to set up an office. And I was like, okay, so I don't know what will make a television office different from a regular office. So I'm just gonna set up an office the way that I know how, because I had worked in offices before. My father was a pastor. So I was used to organizing and setting up things. So I set up the office. It was myself and another girl. And so when she came back, when our venue manager came back, she came to me and said, I'm keeping you because you know how to organize and you know how to put things together. So that was my first I should be in. So I survived that, and then I moved on and I started to work with independent publicists here in Atlanta, because at the time Atlanta was still kind of finding its way with the music and the movies, so things were kind of spotty here and there. I ended up going to a local television station, and so when I got there, I was working in master control, which is like the most boring job you could ever have in a television station, because you're sitting there just watching the programs and you're making sure you always have something on air. There's no dead space, no dead air, and I hated it. So opportunity presented itself because they had a PR director, and we were getting ready. We used to do these pledge drives, and so he was getting ready to start PR for that. And at the time, I think a friend of mine had mentioned something about, well, you like to write, maybe you should do something in PR. And I was like, what is PR? So I went to the local bookstore, got all these books, and started reading. And I was like, this is actually a good fit for me. So I go back to the television station and I have a meeting with the PR director. And I'm just like, look, I need to shadow you. I need to work with you. And he said, I need an assistant. And so from there, I started writing radio copy. I started organizing volunteers for the pledge drive. I just did whatever I could to get my feet wet. On the flip side of that, since I was no longer in school and I had so much free time, I started to seek out independent publicists to figure out what this actually looked like from the entertainment entertainment side. From the entertainment side, I met a lot of interesting characters. It was people who were just getting their career started. It was people who were actually trying to build the foundation that Atlanta now stands on. And luckily, I happened to be in the right place at the right time where people were like hearing from their friends in LA and from these record labels and things, you know, you need to get a publicist. And people here were like, what's a publicist? And luckily, I had enough intellect to explain it to them in layman's terms. And so from there, I started building clientele. So I worked with a lot of professional athletes, a lot of people that worked, that played for the Atlanta Falcons. Some people played, one of my guys played for San Diego. And so we just decided to start doing these football camps for kids and, you know, different things like that. So it kind of went like the community was so small. The sports guys and the music guys and the guys on television, they all knew each other and they all wanted to do stuff. So I always say I've been very blessed because I've never had to buy or advertise my business. It's always been word of mouth. So from one person to another, call this person, call this person, call this person. So somewhere in there, I decided that I needed more training. And so a friend of mine was working at a local production company and she told me about this company. Now, what was interesting about this company was I had never heard of it, but they were successful. They owned their own brick and mortar location. It was a mom and pop operation. And the funny part was the guy that owned it, he was actually out of Chicago. He moved here during the Olympics to start. He was working with Coca-Cola and Home Depot because during the games, they were doing these things that were called VNRs, or video news releases. And so he had kind of perfected the art of doing that. So Coca-Cola hired him exclusively. He came here and he had to hire a whole bunch of people. So I ended up with him like around 99. I graduated in 96. Look, don't hold it against me. I am old, but I'm still here. So 99, I end up with him. And so that his company actually merged public relations and broadcasting. So companies would hire us to say, you know, say if Coca-Cola has a new bottle that they want to launch to the consumers, they would hire this company and basically we would send a producer out with a cameraman and they would capture all of this video and bring it back to the office. We would edit it into a 3 to 5 minute piece, put it up on Satellite World, register it with Nielsen's, and then report it to the client that all of these people saw their video and saw their product. And so we were very successful. When I started with the company, I think he had just hit the $1 million mark. By the time I left 4 years later, he was racking in like 10 million a year. So for me, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And so I basically said I wanted to get there and learn what he was doing, but I always own things. For me, a big whenever it was
Okay, it looks like we lost you, Jurena. I don't know if you can hear us. It looks
Yes,
like
I can hear you.
it looks like she reconnected.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I lost my connection.
Okay.
Y'all hear me? Y'all still with me?
Yep.
Okay. So I turned on my backup, so hopefully that won't happen. So I basically decided before I even started working with that company that I was going in to learn everything I could and bring it back to my friends who were, now getting these record deals and, putting out different groups. I made a big decision to network when and wherever I could. So whenever there was something going on, I would always try and show up. I would always try and connect with other women in the business, and try and build a network. And luckily, that has been sustaining for me where I am 20 plus years in the business and I still get calls from people saying, hey, my daughter is a rapper, or my cousin is a rapper and they need press, or they're trying to do this event, how do we do it? And so I've been blessed in those areas. So for me, PR in general is let me start here. The foundations of it, having excellent writing skills. Now, the upside for you guys is when I started, we didn't have things like Grammarly. You guys have that. We had to be sure of where we were putting semicolons and things like that. You guys have all these tools, so you are actually ahead of the curve if you're using those tools. So I always tell people, they always say, how do you define PR? So PRSA basically says that, it's a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. Well, I say it builds those relationships between the organizations and their audiences, because the number one thing is always remember who you're talking to. If you're going after African American consumers, you speak to them in a different dialect professionally, but in a different dialect than you would to a 65-year-old white man. So I always tell people those are some key things to staying relevant in PR and making sure that what you're selling to these journalists is viable. Another thing with PR that I don't think a lot of people get is that you kind of serve two masters. You have your media that they want certain things done a certain way, and then you have your client who's saying, I need my name on top of this press release. I need to see my name first in the headline. Well, guess what? CNN doesn't want to see their name. If it's not Oprah, don't lead with, like your client name. Make it something that people, that's kind of, something that if I'm watching television and I may not be in your demographic, but I can still connect to. So you kind of have to play that thing where you're serving two masters. When Professor Jen and I first connected, she sent me an email asking me some of the things to share with the class. And you guys are welcome. If you have a question while I'm talking, wave at the camera. I will stop because I like conversations. I'm a people person. I talk a lot. I've always talked a lot. And so, I would appreciate if y'all would, respond and talk back. So she asked me to share like successes and failures. So for me, what I think is a success for me is basically getting into the business, because people don't really say this, but this is just how I feel. When it's time for us to enter the workplace, they look at our HBCU degrees as if they're throwaways. So you basically have to make sure that your shit is polished. You have to make sure that you are on top of your shit, because they're going to look at you just based on the color of your skin, the school that you went to, and automatically assume you don't know as much as that next person, when in reality, you probably know a lot more. Your life has probably spanned a lot more experiences than that person that went to Stanford. So you have to play into all of that. Another success I would say is staying in the business, because I've been in so long, especially here in Atlanta. I left for 4 years, came back, and got right back in, writing and putting people on television. But staying in the business can be hectic. Every day you won't be working on something every day, especially if you're independent. You may have a time when You got downtime. But what do you do in that downtime? You're learning, you're figuring out what's next, you're networking, you're talking to people. And even though I know that looks different now because of this crap that's going on with this virus, there's still ways you can do it. Just like with Professor Jen and I, we met in a group on Facebook, and now I'm here talking to you guys. So, it's a thing where PR in the Black community, or minority communities, as they like to call us, it's kind of a hidden gem. Like, a lot of our people will say, I know business, but they may not know every aspect of the business. Marketing and PR go hand in hand, but a lot of people look at PR as marketing. That's not the case. Marketing, I like to say, is the arts and crafts of business. So you're over there taking pretty pictures, you're cutting out things, you're making pretty designs. But PR is more about talking to people, selling people, getting them to buy into what you're selling, this person you're selling, this product you're selling, so that they will give you ink, or they'll give you time on their radio show or on television. So you kind of have to walk that fine line. And unfortunately, with our community, you have to do a lot of explaining, because they look at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about. How many of you guys have actually sat down with your parents and told them that you want a career in PR or broadcasting, and they're like, how are you going to do that? Are y'all being supported when y'all tell your parents or, family members that this is what you want to do for your life? Yes, no?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay. If y'all have that support system, great. Who was that? Brandon?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought I heard somebody say something. Okay. If you have that support system, please hold on to it. You have to find people that are of like mind. You have to find people that understand what you're doing, because a lot of people will tell you that's not a real job. And in reality, it's one of the hardest jobs in the world. Trying to get people, convincing people, persuading them to see things your way, to listen to somebody's music, to come to somebody's show. Like, they have to trust you. And that's why I tell, like, when I talk to the students at Clark Atlanta, I tell them all the time, make sure online, I understand you have fun online, but make sure you are building a trustworthy profile. If people want to find out something, they don't, if you're a PR person, they want to trust that your word is golden. They don't want to have to second guess. And we all make mistakes. So if you put something out and it's not 100% accurate, just retract it. But try not to make a habit of doing that, because then you get pigeonholed like that's a fake PR person. I've met a lot of people here in Atlanta who kind of, just to be a part of something, they'll say something like, oh, I do PR. And so people form their own opinions of what PR looks like. Actually, I'm working with a group of women right now, and there's a big hair care brand here in the city, and she's looking for new representation. We've been talking to this woman now for about 2 months. The first month was hard. They brought me in, and they basically explained to me that, this woman has been in business for almost 30 years. Over those 30 years, I cannot tell you how many PR people she's had. But from talking to her, I could tell that she had been burned. She had been lied to. She had been led astray. And so when it was my time to talk to her, I basically told her, I don't guarantee anything. There are no guarantees in PR. Things can happen. Breaking news comes up and your story is scrapped, and you guaranteed that to your client, and now you're looking like you're untrustworthy. So from talking to this woman, I told her, I said, I don't make any guarantees, but what I do guarantee is that I will work as hard as I possibly can and as smart as I can to make sure that your brand is featured in the publications and on the different broadcasts that you want to be featured on. Her thing to me was, I don't want that tells me I can get you in Sheen magazine or putting me on blogs that no one reads, and after a year that link is gone. That's a lot of what's going on, especially over here in Atlanta, because everybody's trying to get on. And my thing is, let your work put you on. Like, yes, you work off your associations, you work off of your network, but the thing that's going to sustain you is when you deliver positive results. So that's the success part of it. The failure, I've had a lot. I've had a lot. For me, it was very trying, just trying to figure out where I fit in this thing. So I basically went from corporate to entertainment, and I would go back and forth, never really just settling on one. And then I had to think about it and say, you know what, that's a selling point. Because not only can I speak the entertainment language, I can speak the corporate language. And so I started to, you know, present myself like that to people, and I started to get more clients. One thing I did find is that when it comes to the corporate side, things are a lot more organized. They have a lot more money traditionally. We'll see how this thing plays out. On the entertainment side, it looks like they have a lot more money. They don't. They don't. A lot of them are fronting. A lot of them are hoping that your pen will make them relevant, will make them, you know, special, will help them sell some records, move some units, and you have to manage people's expectations. Like, that's one of the biggest things that one of my mentors told me. And basically, it's like people come in and they say, oh, you're a publicist. Oh, I know I'm going to be on Good Morning America within a week. Well, no, because Good Morning America has an editorial calendar. Good Morning America has a team of producers. People move around. So I can't guarantee that I'll get you there, but I the best possible angle to cover your story. So another failure, I would say, similar to what's happening with us now, like this whole, I hate even saying the name coronavirus, but I've been around long enough. I survived 9/11. 9/11 happened, and I was actually working for the company that married broadcasting and PR. And for 3 weeks, we had no idea if we were going to even have jobs, because that was the first time in the history of broadcasting that competing networks were sharing footage. We were in the business of supplying footage. So guess what? All of these jobs that we had lined up, they had to be scrapped. We sat in the office for a week wondering what was going to happen. About week 3, they were like, just go home. Just go home, and we'll see where this thing goes. But we recovered from that. But one thing 9/11 taught me was I couldn't depend on another man's job or another person employing me. I still have the skills. Someone needs the skills. So that's when I went ahead and started my company and started consulting. That way, I felt like if my job quit me, then I still had insurance. And that's happened quite, you know, from time to time. Another thing was with that last recession, you know, my husband was in real estate. We lost everything on the real estate side. But the thing that sustained us was I was still in business. So I was still getting calls to, you know, work this show or do media relations for this. And so it sustained us until we could, you know, recover a little bit from that recession. Another story I'll share with y'all about failures. I actually had, it was a beer company. And so they hired the company that I worked for. And basically I was in charge of distribution. So I sent out all the product to all the pertinent media outlets. And so with this one, we were working on television stations. Well, the product was beer. And so with regulations that, you know, come with sending beer through the mail, I had to find an alternative. So we decided to FedEx all of this beer to about 50 television stations throughout the US. Now, the team that was supposed to be supporting me, they left me hanging. But I'm results driven, and I don't like things on my plate. I don't like it. If it's ball in my court, I'm trying to get it out of my court as quickly as possible. So I went ahead and decided to go ahead and ship all of this beer. The failure came in when I didn't wrap it properly. So some of it arrived intact, but a lot of it arrived shattered, broken glass. And when these people got these packages, they're sitting in a newsroom, and all of a sudden the newsroom smells like beer. Instantly, they wanted to know who sent this. All fingers pointed back to me. That was the failure, because my boss was livid until we got the report for that day. That beer story went around the globe 3 times because I messed up and sent everybody broken beer, or it got broken in transit. But guess what? That client's name was on every television station around the world that day because of my mistake. So sometimes your failures can turn into a blessing. Now, I was terrified because I was like, I'm not ready to quit. I'm not ready to leave, and I don't want to leave on a bad note. But when we got that report, all was forgiven. And that's the beauty about PR. You can mess up, but if you clean it up really nicely, it'll work to your benefit. I actually got a raise after that. So the next part she wanted me to talk about was the racial barriers. I kind of started with this in the beginning. But for you guys, I'm telling you, they don't believe in us. They don't believe we can do the job. You have to make sure you prove that to them. Or scrap the whole thing and do it for yourself. I am 100% behind entrepreneurs because I don't have time to keep running behind somebody that doesn't believe in me. But what I do have time is to cash those checks from people that need my services. So that's what I focus on. So I'm telling you guys, those portfolios, I had to walk around with a big portfolio and try to get meetings with people. You guys are have an advantage because you can do digital portfolios and email them out. You can sit in the comfort of your living room and network with people. We had to be out and about, and unfortunately, we don't really, we're still separate. Like, you know, there's still Black events, there's still white events, there's still Asian events, but you have to be that person that says, you know what, this may not be a good fit for me, but I'm going in here to see what they're doing. I'm going in here to make a connection. I'm going in here to talk to somebody. So I say, for the racial barriers, don't let them get you down. Don't let them stop you. You just have to get strategic and figure out, how am I going to insert myself into this situation? They don't know they need me. I know they need me. So I'm going in and I'm going to figure out how to make this work for me. Now, I'm not saying that every time you go into a situation that someone's not going to be receptive. But what I will say is, you may have to do some things free of charge to prove yourself, because people are always looking to doubt you. And the only way that they don't doubt you is when you have receipts, when you have positive results, when you have proof of those positive results. So if you get someone on Good Morning Alabama or whatever it is, make sure you record that. Make sure you keep a record of it. Make sure you keep whatever documentation that producer has sent you, because at some point that may come up in a conversation, and people talk a good game. But when you have proof, when you have the receipts, they can't dispute that. So I would say, make sure your work is stellar. Make sure you keep learning, because even though I'm 20 plus years into this, I'm still learning things. I have my kids helping me with stuff. You know, I feel like I like talking to younger people, because you guys have hidden gems that have made this job for me a whole lot easier. I started out doing this when we had a fax machine. Half of y'all don't even know what a fax machine is. But the way that things are set up now, it's just a little bit easier to get in contact with the person that you need to get your client or your product or your service in front of the right person. You know, make sure when you're writing for your clients, make sure you're speaking in the right voice and the right tone for them. You know, some products you can come off a little, you can be a little funny. Some products you have to be absolutely serious. Like in crisis communications, there is no room for a joke. Like, they want to know, how are you handling this? And one of the scariest things as a PR person is when you're in crisis communication and every major network or publication is calling you looking for answers. So you have to be that person and say, okay, this is the problem. What's the solution? Let me start giving out solutions. Let me start figuring out how we can get past this. Where does my company stand on this crisis? Are we, you know, investigating? So it's a constant communication thing. Like, my thing is, don't clam up. When they call you, if you don't know the answer, tell them, I don't know that right now, but I will get back to you. Don't just say, I don't know. Don't just leave it open-ended. No. Fine. We are the solutions people. We are the people that the newsroom and the editors are looking for, because they can't think of every story. They can't think of every angle. So we're kind of like their helpers. And it's a win when you open, when you log on and you go to Yahoo and your story is the top story. Now, your friends or your network may not know that you're the person behind that. They see your client. And that's the part that's important. I guess for me, when it comes to like this new age of PR, I had a problem with the girls who were out there, saying I do PR, and all I saw was TNA shots on their profiles, or I saw them, not presenting themselves in a professional manner. My thing with that is when you present yourself that way, that's the way people are going to receive you. So ladies, if some guy is like, oh, I'm a rapper and I want you to come by the studio, you need to have some boundaries. You need to tell him, okay, I can meet you no later than 8:30. Because guess what? The longer you stay in the studio, the more it feels like a party, and the more you're inclined to get a little loose. That's an open door for them to say, she's not professional. But if you keep it professional, they'll keep it professional with you 9 times out of 10. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to have to check somebody, because you will. You're going to have to check somebody. But if you keep it professional, then your reputation stays intact. Now, I'm not one of those people that, I pretty much say what I want, but I feel like you can say whatever you want as long as you know how to say it. So my mom used to say stuff like, you're really good at being nice, nasty. I think so. I can say the harshest thing and people take it like, okay, I'll listen. But if you say it in a harsh tone, they may not receive it. So, just think about those things. You have to absolutely think about how you're presenting yourself. You have to absolutely keep your reputation intact. You have to make sure that, with your HBCU degree, that when you're communicating to these employers, lay it all out on your resume. Don't worry about, is my resume too long? No. Figure out, find these resources that tell you how to present yourself. And sometimes we may use a different language or a different dialect. They may say, a media alert when really it should be a press release. So learn the differences, because the language, the use of the language can trip you up. So if you stay on top of that, I think you'll be good, and I think you'll succeed if you are always motivated and driven. Now, a lot of times you're going to have to be your own motivation, but I absolutely encourage you to do that. So let's see. I made some notes, so I was trying to make sure I was covering everything. So 2 tips. Always manage your client's expectations, and don't be afraid to pivot. Just because you had a whole plan that you wrote out and you said, this is what we're going to do for the next 3 months, anything can happen. Don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to edit that whole plan and say, you know what, scrap that. We're moving in another direction because this is more beneficial for your product, your service, or your brand. So those are my 2 things. A couple of things that I want you guys to always make sure you're on top of as much as you possibly can. Being a people person. I'm not saying you got to kiss ass. I'm just saying be pleasant. Make sure you're writing. You stay on top of your writing. So even when you don't have anything to write, do it just as a hobby, just so your skills are still fresh. Your organization. Make sure you can get to things quickly. People don't like to wait. We in an instant gratification situation in the world, and people don't like to wait on stuff. So the faster you can deliver, the better. And then your time management. If someone comes to you with a project and they say, oh, we're going to have a listening party, don't wait for your client to say, okay, I'm ready to go. You become the driving force in that. You're the expert. You know about communications. You know about deadlines with these publications and these different television stations and radio stations. So you have to become the driving force. And the other thing is, don't sell yourself short. I understand we got people that, we love, and we love their music and we love what they do. But guess what? They have to invest in themselves. And PR and marketing is a huge investment. Don't undersell yourself. Make sure they pay you. Don't make a move until they've given you some type of deposit. Don't start working and then you're out there and you don't have any resources, because how can you work if your lights are off? So I want y'all to be realistic about this whole PR game. And I hope that I have said something in this little conversation that we've had that can help you. So I'm hoping you guys have some questions for me.
Yep. So with that, thank you so much, Jurena. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions if you guys have any, as you should. Now, who wants to go first?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Who am I speaking to?
Brandon.
Hey, Brandon. Where are you? Okay, I see you. Hi, Brandon. Nice hair.
Thank you. I was just gonna ask, like, with athletes, other than the camps, like, what else have you done with like professional athletes?
So we did sports camps. I also worked for a sports agent. And so we did the marketing for the guys preparing to go to the draft. So that would consist of writing the press releases, writing the bios, editing. I think at the time it was 40, 50 teams. Being signed and walk them all the way through their rookie year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
How did you like transition from going from doing the PR for the Olympics to going like straight to doing athletes and stuff? Like, how did you like make a smooth transition into, I guess, going from working with athletes, like transitioning into working with athletes from just a professional environment?
Looks like she froze again.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep, now we can.
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, I'm sorry, Rico. I didn't hear the last part of your question.
Like, how did you go from a professional environment to working with these athletes and musicians? Basically, was my question.
Okay, so for me, I always say this occupation picked me because with my father being a pastor, my foundation is the church. And in church, you get a whole bunch of different people and a whole bunch of different personalities. So from the time I was small, I was able to be that chameleon where I could hang out with the kids in the band. I could hang out with the debate team, but I could also go and hang out with the boys that was under the tree smoking weed. And I understood where I stood on all of that. And I understood how to help them and get through to them. So for me, it wasn't a hard transition. Maybe learning the different areas of sports marketing, but just working with people on a day-to-day basis. It's just about reading people and understanding where they're coming from and where they're trying to go. And that you can get that with just conversations.
Thank you.
So what was
You're
like
welcome.
the pivotal like point for you when you was like, all right, I know I can really do this, like seriously, like no doubts, I'm like going crazy.
Okay, so one night, the name of the company that I work for, and I want y'all to look them up because they're still a pretty hidden gem in the PR industry, but they're called KEF Media. K is in Kevin, E is in Edmund, F is in Foley. He was my mentor, white guy, Irish guy out of Chicago. I worked with Kevin for 4 years. I was the youngest manager that the company had ever had. I was in charge of like setting up satellite trucks, setting up satellite transmissions, distributing tape, making sure producers got everything that they needed. So one night, I had been thinking about, I want to go out on my own. I had already had some success with like 1 or 2 athletes, but I felt like I needed that structured environment because for whatever reason, something told me at some point people are going to want to know, where did you come from? How did you learn all this? So that's why I went to work for KEF. Well, one night I was in bed and I had 3 phones at the time. And the satellite truck driver called me and it's like 3:30 in the morning. I'm knocked out. Y'all can hear me? Okay. So I'm knocked out. I answer the phone. I don't turn on the light. And he says, Jurena, I can't see the feed. Now, normally I would get up, if I was in the office, I would get up, grab our media alert and read the coordinates to him. That night I'm in the bed and I was like, I'm tired, I'm not getting up. And I said, Reggie, try satellite, whatever, transponder, whatever, audio should be 6.2, 6.8. Before I opened my eyes, he said, I got a picture. I said, okay. We hung up the phone and I sat up in the bed and I said, God, if I can do this with my eyes closed, I'm coordinating satellites with my eyes closed. I think I'm okay to step out on my own because I don't need to be micromanaged. I'm managing people and I'm one of the youngest people in the company. So once I got past those fears of, oh, I need to work for a company, and once you realize you can manage yourself, you can move into the entrepreneurial realm. Now, my first venture, I wanted to make sure. Luckily, I was in a little group of people where, you know, Outkast was here and they were doing their things, and I had worked on some of their music videos. Well, an opportunity presented itself where they were super busy. This was maybe like 2001, 2002. They were super busy. They were building their brand. They flying everywhere. You know, what used to be, we'll see you at the club on Friday, turning until we don't see you for 3 months because you've been around the world. Well, they ran into a problem because they were so busy. They had been nominated for an MTV award. And so I knew the one of the girls that was on the marketing team, and she and I were cool. And she told me one night we were out, she was like, I don't know how we're going to support this nomination from MTV because the guy's schedule is so hectic. Well, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it, and I said, well, I think I have a way that we can make it all work. And she was like, tell me. And I told her, I'm taking a play from the corporate boys playbook. You don't always need that talent there to talk about that brand. So we inserted people from the camp, the music video director, the newly signed artists. We put them up as talent to go to radio stations and talk to the audiences about the video, to talk to them about what the group stood for. Once the guys signed off on it, it was a go. And so we hit the ground running, and basically, you know, things weren't as solid as they are now in Atlanta. So it was kind of like hit or miss. We had some entertainment publications, but the big thing was MTV. And so I had a friend that knew somebody else that trusted me and said, I'm going to give you his email. And I made contact with one writer at MTV. And I fed him every Outkast story I could possibly get to him. And as luck would have it, he knew somebody at MSNBC. He knew somebody else. And once this whole Grammy thing came into the picture, it just took off from there. I started getting calls for the music video director to do interviews. I started getting calls for the new artists to do interviews. And luckily, because I was able to work with on the corporate side and learn how they did things, I was kind of like the spook who sat by the door. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with that book or that movie, but it's basically about this black man who goes to the FBI and he learns everything that they're doing and he brings it back to their neighborhood. That's the way I looked at that whole mission. Like, I've been learning what the corporate boys have been doing. I need to help my own people, the people that I care about, succeed the way that they're making Coca-Cola succeed. And it worked. And so from that point on, I was just like out here being independent. And, you know, people continue to call because I was actually able to make a successful run of that campaign. So it's something that you have to be, you have to convince yourself on your own. It's internal validation. You can't wait on somebody else to say, I think you should be independent. No, set some criteria in your mind and say, you know what, if I can do this and no one has to help me, or I can make it happen on my own, you have to make sure you are ready. No one can tell you when you're ready. And a lot of times you may not feel like you're ready, but just gather what you know and make a run for it. Did that answer your question, Edison?
Yes, ma'am.
You don't have to say yes, ma'am, but okay.
Yes, it did.
All right, who else has a question?
I got one more question.
Okay.
All right, so besides Grammarly, what you said we should stay familiar with and using, what other tools or apps that y'all use in the business world for like PR that we should be familiar with that they don't really speak of?
Okay, so tools. So there are different services. Like people will tell you, you know, you may see a ad or a job posting that says something like must be able to make, how do they say it? Must be able to make connections with journalists. There are services for that. So Nielsen's Media Research, they're the largest company in the US. They basically track how many people watch television. They track how many people read certain publications, all of that. They track what we're watching. So they may be the original, you know, right below the government, big brother. Nielsen's is out there. When you have video content, there's a way that you can encode it, and Nielsen's will track it around the world. There's also another one called Muckrat. I just discovered them maybe about a year or so ago, but they have a platform where you can go in, you can build databases of journalists, you can send out your news through their web portal, and it goes directly to the journalist. Nielsen's also has this thing called Secessions. And so basically it's a database. They pay people a lot of money to sit in their offices and call or make contact with people at MSNBC and CNN, and they sit there and they say, is Jen still your lifestyle and culture reporter? Is Jurena still your sports editor? And people confirm or deny. Journalists move around a lot. So I say, what I tell like some of the girls that I talk to, I tell them, build relationships with the people, but 9 times out of 10, that publication is not going to change unless they go out of business. So if you have that basic information, you know, the general email, the general number, you can always call there and say, hey, I need to know who's working your assignment desk for Saturday. I have an event on Saturday. So you have to make sure that you have those different tools. Muckrat, Nielsen's Media Research. There are also some smaller ones. One of my associations is building one. It's Women in PR. And so they from time to time build lists, and they'll sell the list for like $10. So those are very good tools. And basically they're just tools for keeping you in touch with people. So if you look at it on the flip side, if you got Twitter, if you got LinkedIn, if you got Facebook, Instagram, you can find these people on those platforms too. So if you're reading an article, say you read an article and you see that I sent Professor Jen 2 articles that I hope you guys read. And one is by this guy, his name is Leon Valentine. And I read the article, made a note of his name, and went and found him on LinkedIn. Now he's my contact. So you do things like that, because those databases, they weren't designed for like smaller agencies. Those databases cost thousands and thousands of dollars a year. And if you're not, you know, you don't have those larger contacts, you have to get creative and figure out how to still make contact with these people, because they need you and you need them. So those are my 2.
How you spell the muskrat?
It's M-U-C-K. Let me make sure I'm spelling it right. Give me just a minute. But it's those are 2 of the so it's M-U-C-K-R-A-C-K, Muckrat. Another thing I hope that you guys do, I know you guys think that Facebook is for old people, but there are some groups on Facebook where one group in particular, the group that I met your professor in, there are thousands of women in this group. They are talking about different issues. They're talking about strategies. They're talking about, hey, I need a job. They're talking about, hey, will you review my resume? And unfortunately, even though we're doing this whole social distancing thing, you can still connect with people. And you have to find those ways. So even though Facebook may not be your target demographic, guess what? Those decision makers, they're my age. They're older than me. We're on Facebook. If you want to get in, you need to go where that audience is and then infiltrate.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other question before we tell Ms. Cantrell thank you for her time?
Can we get your email?
Yes.
It's in
Y'all ready?
Blackboard.
Okay, it's Blackboard.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Professor Jen?
I said you can give it to them now, but it's also in their learning management system with your information, your bio and everything.
Okay, so I'll give it to you as well. It's J as in John, the word glass, like a drinking glass, GLASS, P as in Peter, R as in Robert, @gmail.com. And let me say one more thing. Guys, don't get caught up on, I need to build a $1,000 website. Don't get caught up on, I need to have the best pictures. I'm telling you guys, if this is the profession you want, do your very best. I have had a Gmail account for as long as Gmail has been around, and 1,000 people have told me, you should do a website. Guess what? When I did a website, people stopped responding to me because they were used to seeing my Gmail address, so I scrapped it and went back to Gmail. I got better results. So make sure you're paying attention where you get those results, and don't just go with the trends of what everybody says you should do, because everything doesn't work for everybody.
Excellent advice. Does anybody have any other questions to close us out?
Does your company currently offer internship opportunities?
I'm thinking about that, because with this beauty brand that we're working to secure their business, it's going to be a lot of moving parts. So if you guys want to be considered, and for me, I've been doing virtual offices since 2002. This right here is just like easy peasy for me. I didn't have a hard transition with going home to work, because I fought for that in like 2000. Like, we have the internet. I have no idea why I'm driving in traffic to come over here and sit in this office with y'all when I can do this at home. And no one wanted to hear that from little black girl that thinks she know everything. But guess what? Little black girl was right. So yes, ma'am. Please send me your resume.
Oh, by the way, you need a photographer now. Somebody
Who is that? Edison?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Well, I know you do a lot of events. If you need any bartenders at the event, I got you too.
Let them know, Rico.
I'm telling you, y'all got to get out here and sell it. Like, you got to let people know that you know what you're doing. You're not gonna take no for an answer. And if they don't, come on board, they're lost. Because guess what? People that turn me down in my rookie season, they apologizing to me now, begging me to work for them. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't want to help you now. I wanted to help you in the beginning. Now I'm picky, and now I'm petty.
Well, look, I'm still a rookie, so you can mess with me whenever you want.
You know what I'm saying? I'm a rookie too.
Kennedy, you had a question?
Tori's question was my question.
Oh, okay.
Well, you want to see some of my work? Here it is. There's one right there.
There's one right there.
Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Y'all stop pitching me. Wait a minute. I wasn't ready.
See, I don't know if it's showing the real good quality at the moment right now. But yeah, that's one.
Okay.
That's one of them. Then just for the the people that just a little creativity right there. I also write poetry. You need me to write something for you? Check out the image. You feel me?
Okay.
It's also a background.
See, what I didn't tell your professor, because I'm from Alabama, I've always felt like the underdog. And I know y'all may feel that way too, because people have this perception that because we in Alabama, we backwards and we dumb. No, we have to show out. So if I can help y'all in any way get a leg up, I'm down.
Oh yeah,
I'm down. But y'all gotta hold up y'all end of the bargain. If I put you onto a lead and you just kind of let it fall by the wayside, you ain't gotta worry about me giving you another one.
Are there any other companies that you would suggest we look up?
Say that again, Kennedy.
Are there any other companies that you suggest we look up and look into?
How many of you guys know about the Ogilvy's and the Ketchums of the world.
Who's that?
Okay.
Only Ogilvy
All
I
right.
know, but Professor Ogilvy.
That's all I'm about to say. That's the only one I know from the show.
Okay, look, y'all. Y'all have got to know the history of this thing, okay? When I want you all to figure out I want you to go and research the beginnings of public relations. They used to call it propaganda, okay? Because we're basically tweaking how we want people to think and react to these different products and services. So there's this man, his last name is Ogilvy. There are these big agencies like Ketchum, and that's Ketchum. Ketchum is a huge firm. They have offices, last time I checked, in 40 countries or something crazy like that. They handle like the Coca-Colas of the world. They handle the Home Depots of the world. And then these other smaller agencies, like I've worked with Ketchum for about maybe 6 months. It wasn't for me. I didn't like the big agencies. But what I didn't like about the big agencies was you focus on one thing. So if you're in media relations, that's where you're gonna be. You're gonna be pitching and emailing all day long for 8-9 hours. With a smaller agency, you get to try a lot of different things. So because I was blessed to land with a smaller agency, I was running around doing pitching, I was producing. He let me do pretty much whatever I wanted to do, and I learned so much that I was able to walk away and no one could tell me that my foundation wasn't solid. So y'all need to look into these larger agencies, because that's where a lot of these, when you see people and say, oh, I'm a public relations expert, and you start to look into their background, they've come from the Ketchums, they've come from the Ogilvy, they've come from the Golden Harrises. So it's a lot of them. But then there are people like Beyonce's publicist. She worked at a huge label. It was the Big Six back then. Record labels don't exist anymore. But guess what? She transferred those skills. She has a nice roster. So you make sure y'all are looking into, like, this thing didn't just start in the 70s, 1970s, and then just start in the 1900s. This thing has been going on for a long time. Wartime is always big on public relations, but they used to call it propaganda. So you have to kind of keep up with the language of the business, because they'll switch it up on you and then you'll be lost. But if you following that track record and be like, okay, you switched up the word on me, but it still means the same thing, you're gonna be good. So y'all can Google a lot of this in your spare time.
Awesome. Well, if there are no other questions, we want to thank her for her time. Going once?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Y'all
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
But also,
Awesome.
check me out on Instagram.
Thank
Scoop.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. We
And
appreciate your time.
Congratulations on graduating, y'all.
Thank you so much. If we could walk, it would be even better.
If you could what?
If we could walk, it would be even better. I think we're going to graduation like this.
I know, but guess what? We're going to survive this, and y'all going to be the generation to tell like the Bill Cosby stories. Like, I survived the coronavirus, and I'm the greatest of all time. So just, keep hope alive and keep pushing forward. Y'all did it, and I'm proud of y'all.
Thank you.
Y'all reach out to me whenever y'all feel like it, okay?
All right.